Thank you for coming. I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm a media journalist based in the UK, despite my US accent. I recognize some of the people in the audience. Thank you for coming to this RTS early evening event. I think we're calling it the National Committee now, National Events. This is about social platforms, broadcasters and platforms working together, a new dawn. Ooh, that sounds exciting. What I found out in getting this group together with my two very able producers was that there's a lot happening in this space. So we've got a lot of content to talk about. We've got a lot of relationships to talk about. We've got a lot of things to talk about in terms of monetization, partnerships, things like that, originals, fascinating stuff. So I hope that you'll get stuck in. We are going to have some time at the end for Q&A. So hold your questions and write them down so you don't forget them, and I will make sure that we get to them at the end. Broadcasters and social media platforms. Now, I've been doing this long enough to know that they weren't always the best of friends. That has changed. Let us say that the relationship has matured. Some of its needs must. Obviously, you know, there are people of certain demographics, younger people, who watch much more TikTok than they do television. So obviously, there's been an exigency to kind of figure out how to work with social if you're a broadcaster. There's also benefits on the other side as well, because obviously social platforms need content. They need good content. So there's a two-way street, let us say. And let's say there's a lot more traffic going both directions, I would say now, than there was for many years. We've got a very good panel here. Thank you all for doing this. Right next to me, we have Matt Risley. He's the head of 4 Studio, which of course is part of Channel 4. And you spend most of your time up in Leeds, don't you?
Indeed.
Yes, which is where 4 Studio is. Thank you, Matt. Next to him, we have James Loveridge. He is Director of Entertainment at Little Dot Studios. Little Dot Studios is part of All3 Media, which of course is a big independent production company. Little Dot's been around for a while. And James, really happy to have you here because you've been thinking about social maybe a lot longer than some in this space.
About 12 years, yeah.
Exactly. So a really long track record on that. Next to him, we have Neil Price. Now, Neil is replacing someone who is on the list who was going to be here, but Neil is actually, I think, better.
I agree.
Don't report that, Stuart. Okay, so Neil Price is the head of TV and film at YouTube in the UK, and he's the guy that actually does a lot of the work, so I think it'll be really good to hear from Neil. And then last but not least, we have Lucy Luke. She is the head of UK partnerships at Snap, or some of you might call it Snap Discover or Snapchat. But anyway, Snap, I think, is the name of the company now. So if I can just start with you, Lucy, just to get stuck in here. When you look at the landscape and how Snap is working with broadcasters, obviously you've seen an evolution. Just talk a little bit about the kind of stuff you're doing, how you're working with broadcasters.
Sure. I like to think that everyone here has downloaded Snap or Snapchat onto their mobile phone. If you have not, I'm going to bamboozle you with a sizzle to show you the type of content that you can see on Snapchat. So, cue sizzle.
Everybody, look at me! Let's go! Sweet suffering Jehovah. Holy sorry.
Wait, what?
I'm excited.
That is true, yeah.
Oh, go on, get a goal for us.
I'm not Jordan Pickford.
Nah, he's got better legs.
I'm suffocating you. This is the dress I wanted. Oh my god!
Oh my god! What the f*** do you do?
He was my best mate growing up.
I can't believe I just got married 5 times.
Nothing about this makes sense.
This kid is a superstar. And it's Italy who are the champions of Europe.
Charlie Hills is going to get a red card.
Max Verstappen, champion of the world.
What's the inside of this?
Orange jelly.
Got attacked. Celebrities don't always seem to get things right.
I walk the Lord and the Lord one.
Another reminder of the brutal nature of Russia's war.
Britain is the world's biggest enabler of financial crime. We are the world's best butler.
Welcome home.
That's not news, we're in the building.
Check this out.
That is a page count.
The Scouts is like the army, innit?
Don't they sell cookies?
Only the strong survive.
Why do we do this?
I'm Dixie. And I'm Charlie.
I'm Sway Lee, and I'm a rock star.
Welcome to Off the Leash.
Rookie of the year, Ezekiel Mitchell.
Amazing.
Don't you just love it?
Everything can change just like that.
Cool. It's amazing the breadth of content you got there. I mean, you've got fun stuff, you've got quite serious stuff, there's news, there's sports. I saw Little Dot was mentioned, I saw Channel 4 mentioned.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little about what your strategy is in terms of working with makers and broadcasters.
Absolutely. That's just where I spend my day, you know, working with rights holders across news, sport and entertainment in the UK, making sure that they can put short form, brand safe content onto Snapchat. I thought it'd be helpful to show you where you can actually see it. So if I can get the next slide up, I promise it's not going to be a presentation, but just visually it helps me explain it. So on Snapchat, you open up the app, you go straight to the camera, which is in the middle, and this is obviously where we're encouraging people to create content to put on Snapchat. Where you can see that content you just saw is to the right of the camera in Stories, or what we call Snapchat Discover. And in a nutshell, it's essentially short form, vertical, made for mobile video content. You can also read articles in there as well. I think I just saw the right smiling face. Anyway, and it's news, sport and entertainment. The main difference with Snapchat versus, say, a YouTube or a Meta is that we curate the content. So a partner like Channel 4 will pitch an idea to my team. We will decide, okay, this is great for the platform, it's brand safe, it will work, and then they upload it to Discover. So for us, we're making sure that we have a very sort of, as I said, brand safe, but also curated platform of content. What Channel 4 or Little Dot, or hopefully other partners, get out of Snapchat is that reach to further audiences, mainly within kind of the younger audience demographic. In fact, I need to share a stat with you. You know, we are reaching in the UK 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds, which is huge, and that's what a lot of broadcasters get out of Snapchat.
And you've just signed a deal with ITV as well, which you think is skews. I mean, it does skew as an older broadcaster.
Yeah.
But they're interested in working with you on what kind of content?
Well, we just launched Love Island, which was huge for us, in part because a lot of Snapchatters or our community were telling us, you know, I'm catching up on Love Island exclusively on Snapchat. It wasn't exclusively on Snapchat. It was syndicated, I think, across many of the other platforms, and also you could tune in to watch it on ITV as it TX. So that was interesting for us to kind of test and learn with Love Island. And we're obviously going to have World Cup highlights as well. So when I explain Snapchat to someone like my dad, I'll say, look, Dad, you can watch, it's a TV channel in your mobile phone where you can actually watch Premier League highlights, World Cup highlights. You can read Hello magazine if you wanted to, watch Hollyoaks, but also we have a lot of Snapchat original content coming up on there as well.
Now, do you have a second slide, or is this chat, or you want to talk about chat still, right?
Yes, so the slide after this, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the partners that we work with in the UK, because I think it kind of gives you the sort of breadth of people working with us as well. And on there, you'll see some digital first publishers, so Lab Bible, Pink News is up there. You know, we aren't just working with broadcasters, we're working with traditional publishers, but also people that are producing content exclusively for digital and to reach those audiences.
Cool. Amazing, the breadth of the content. So, Neil, if I can come to you next. Lucy said something interesting. She says, we curate in a different way than, say, a YouTube or maybe some other platforms. To talk a little bit about what it is that YouTube does differently, because in some ways you're kind of you're the mothership of all this, right? I mean, you've been around a long time. The platform has been, you are young, of course, but the platform has been around a heck of a long time, and it does lots of amazing things. So talk a little bit about what the relationship is now with broadcasters and producers.
Yeah, certainly. So I think similar to what Lucy was saying, I think we aim to sort of meet the partners where their ambition is within reason of what's possible on the platform. Right? So we don't curate, we don't tell people what to upload, what not to upload. We have community guidelines. We have sort of ways in which we We'll limit advertising on things that we think, frankly, we might take a more conservative approach than, say, a broadcaster would even on some content. But within the realm of what those goals are. So if you're the BBC focused on a UK audience, so Strictly Come Dancing, you're uploading those dances the night after, and you're reaching a majority UK audience, despite the fact that you're publishing globally still. So there's clearly already starts to be an incremental audience of people who aren't necessarily there for tune-in. And then in addition to that, we can work with their counterparts on the BBC studio side, so the slightly more commercial arm who's thinking about sort of larger brands like Top Gear or Earth for global distribution and for commercial return. And over time, that conversation has evolved with all of the broadcasters, whether that's ITV, Sky, and increasingly more and more collaboration with the likes of Channel 4.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. With Channel 4 in particular, I mean, one thing you said when we talked earlier is you said there were sort of 3 pillars to what you think about. It's marketing, I may get this wrong, marketing, commercial, and creative. Is that it?
Yeah, so
talk a little bit about what that means, because it sounds a little bit like, marketing speak.
Certainly.
So what does that mean?
So I think it may be the most generous way to YouTube. I apologize, I didn't ask if everyone has that on their phone. I think you have it, whether you want it or not. It's also on your TV.
Can you not have it on your phone? Yeah, sorry.
It's also on your television. It's also... yeah, it's also desktop and everywhere. But I think to that end, most people, at least in the early days, approached us from sort of a funnel of audience. And that top of funnel, right, of awareness and building, and sort of, so that can be that promotional marketing reason why you work with us. And then it's over time, as you build and grow that audience, then it starts to become an interesting conversation of actually there's something to monetize here. And we have 10 different ways in which a creator or partner can monetize. Not all of them feel relevant to media companies, but we do our best to make sure that they're aware, and all of those are open to them to take advantage of. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really those 2 pillars, really. That tends to be the focus of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Channel 4. If we can come to you next, Matt. So Channel 4, obviously Channel 4 has had an interesting relationship with YouTube over the years. I mean, I remember that back in the day when Andy Duncan was still running Channel 4, that he signed a big deal with YouTube. He's going to put all this stuff out, and then the pendulum went the other way, and they pulled everything off YouTube. So where are we now, and how has that evolved? Because I mean, 4 Studios is quite new, but there's been something in the ether about this for a while. So where are you now in terms of dealing with a YouTube or a Snap or these platforms?
I think different broadcasters are at different stages of their relationship with social, and it has evolved quite a bit over the years. I think before 4 Studio existed, there was a period of time where the best word would probably be frenemies.
Frenemies, okay.
Frenemies. We were on social platforms, we were doing stuff, we were reaching people, but I suppose having more of a holistic, future-thinking, sustainable approach to it wasn't necessarily there. So my department was born from the desire to do that. It powers Channel 4's Future 4 strategy, which is very much about digital transformation, digital views, diversifying revenue streams, reaching younger audiences where they're spending time.
Yep.
And so essentially, we kind of started to get going in 2020. I think there is a slide, please. Thank you very much. Which also calls the 3 pillars, which is good. Means
that's good. Ooh.
Sounds like I know what I'm talking about.
You're aligned.
And essentially, what we've tried to do with 4 Studio is start thinking more sustainably in longer term. Social is actually incredibly complicated. It is not only one thing. To call to what Neil was saying, we have 3 key strategic pillars. One is about marketing, and that is everything from making sure that someone who knows social is in the room at the point of commission, ideally even pre-commission, because it's all well and good trying to make noise about something when it TXs, but actually if you're embedded in the process from the start, you can come up with creative ways to help that evolve as the show is being made. We'll show a clip of something later on which we call a digital extension, which is essentially a social-first spin-off of a linear show that you may be watching. From a brand and tone of voice point of view, we're very aware that people are coming to Channel 4 in different ways every single day. Some people may be doing that through Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and so having a strong brand presence and a tone of voice is really important, depending on whatever platform you're on. And then I suppose showing a platform and channel strategy as a whole, we see that primarily through a marketing lens because you're thinking about the audience first. From a commercial point of view, we've been very successful over the last couple of years. Before Force Studio existed, Channel 4 didn't make any money through social. Last year, we made over 14.5 million. So there are opportunities there if you know how to collaborate with partners and how to come up with kind of multifaceted strategies.
And that's mostly advertising, I assume, or all advertising?
It's a combination of things.
Okay.
So we have branded entertainment, which is essentially when we commission content funded by a brand. We have social monetization, which is the ads that you see around the clips and the content that we put on these platforms. I don't have my glasses on. Social sponsorship, essentially working out how to extend a linear sponsorship into a social space.
Okay.
If 3 are sponsoring Gogglebox, ideally when you see a clip from Gogglebox on Facebook, it pulls through and you have kind of an alignment. And then direct sales is something we're dipping our toes in, which is essentially working out how to take our all 4 inventory and take it to audiences that are maybe viewing this content in other spaces. And then finally, the creative pillar is really interesting. I think we have a head of digital commissioning called Sasha Kari, who is trying to create a strategy that is purely focused at young audiences and short-form content for people watching this stuff in the places where they are spending time. So that's a bit of an overview.
We'll watch the clips later, but because we'll get back to that. But let me ask you one question before I go to James. When it used to be that there was a lot of, we'll do something on social to bring the audience back to linear. That seems to now be changing. Is that, I mean, do you still have arguments inside Channel 4, for example, about, well, is it social first or, online first, or is it linear channel first, or do you still have that argument, or is it sort of horses for courses and different content goes different places?
Yeah, I wouldn't say argument. No, I would say it's evolving.
Spirited discussion.
Spirited discussion. I think, again, it's part of our Future Force strategy was trying to think about where audiences are spending their time and trying to make sure that we're visible with our amazing content to where they are spending it. So it's always going to be a push and pull. I've worked in social and TV for like 10 to 15 years. That conversation is always there, but I think it is evolving to a place where you understand all this stuff can coexist and it's not competing as much.
Yeah, I'm getting nodding heads over here, which is always a good sign, right? So James, let me come to you. Talk about Little Dot and your role in this ecosystem, so to speak, because Little Dot kind of was created to kind of help broadcasters socialize, if I can use that term, content. Or in the early days, I know you did a lot of clipping of shows. You may still do that, but it's also evolved. So where is Little Dot today in terms of...
Yeah, so when we first started out about kind of 10 years ago, it was very much like nobody saw any value in social content. They just, whatever, you want to put out clips, fine. There was a view that it was just kind of an afterthought. And over that time, we've built very substantial audiences and meaningful kind of engagement with them across multiple different platforms. And I think those 3 pillars of the, commercial, marketing and creative, we've got about, in entertainment vertical, I think there's about 150 different partners we're working with across, globally, across different platforms. And many of them have very, very different objectives. I would say that about 80% of the people that I'm talking to really want to make money from the content they own. And that's, a key objective, and that's fine. How do we maximise that opportunity for revenue? But ultimately, whether the objective is commercial, and it is about monetisation, whether it's marketing or it's driving to a, supported SVOD platform, if we're Amazon Prime trying to push to subscriptions, or Netflix, the very same messaging, you can't do any of it without building an organic audience first, and you do that by fully understanding what the platforms want of you. I always kind of say there's 2 kind of core languages you need to be able to speak when you're looking at platforms, and it's the language of the algorithm and it's the language of the audience. How will you deliver that content to the people, and how will you get it in a way that they want to engage? I'd say how it's evolved and the way that we approach it differently now is that we're very much fan focused. It's all about how do you talk to them in the language that they are talking to each other, like in interacting, and it's no longer a stilted one-way kind of marketing push, but an actual dialogue with the audience. You create content that is completely evolved from the initial idea and messaging that this archive show might have originally had. And I think that's the beauty of social platforms. It allows you to be a bit of a chameleon with your brand and position it in a way that is appealing to the audience where they are, in a way in which they communicate with each other. And yeah, I'm aware we've got like a sizzle, because we do a lot of different things. And
okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to watch that?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's watch this.
Chuck it on. Let's do this.
Action.
We are Little Dot Studios.
an award-winning digital content agency and media network. We exist to realize potential in every story. Working with the world's most recognizable brands, distributors, and sports rights holders, we discover, create, distribute, amplify, and monetize groundbreaking digital entertainment. We manage over 600 digital channels, delivering 6 billion organic views and more than 390 million hours of watch time every month.
Classic clips, exclusive mashups, and all the best stuff from this season.
Our vast digital footprint, combined with our award-winning in-house production studio, allows us to create audience-first, data-driven, platform-pioneering content.
Welcome to the British Independent Film Awards.
Yeah, you can't make that up, man. That's nice.
In 2020, we welcomed sports and branded content agency Wing and History Hit, the podcast network and content publisher. We are digital experts, platform specialists, and content superfans. We are Little Dot Studios. This is our Little Dot, and here is where a new story begins.
So, Sizzle's slightly out of date. We've now got 7.7 billion views going through our network every month, but I've been told I can't get it updated every time we break a record. So
it happens too often.
But the value of that number and the value of that is it gives us a huge macro view of what is happening on the platforms, how changes in the algorithms, like the disrupting force of TikTok and how that made all the other platforms pivot and change their approach. We get to do that by looking at masses of data and helping utilize that data and that insight and understanding to make sure that whatever work we're doing with your brand, your rights, what show, whatever you're working on, we can maximize that reach.
So in a way that segues into my question, which is, what platforms are best? And I suppose it depends, of course we have two of them here, it sort of depends what it is you're,
YouTube and Snap are equally top.
But as you said, TikTok has disrupted the world. Just talk a little bit about that and how that's impacted maybe how you are helping your clients think about social.
Yeah, so the idea that you have to be everywhere all at once isn't right for everyone. I think you need to be a bit more strategic if you don't have unlimited resource. Some people do, yeah, cool, let's be everywhere. But realistically, I think it's understanding, well, what is the content you have? Who is the audience you're trying to hit? YouTube is a great platform for archive and a repository of legacy content, so you can build a long-lasting kind of hub of content that constantly feeds into itself. Like Snap and TikTok are great at reaching much younger audiences, and it's very quick to kind of hit a new audience instantaneously. You don't necessarily have to have the same legacy momentum that you need to build with YouTube and Facebook. And Facebook is, again, like a real community hub. You can build fan communities and separate, just even chat rooms where they almost act as a supercharger to kind of boost content that you are creating and putting out onto your pages. So in terms of how we approach those platforms, we treat each one individually, and we might have technically the same clip from the same TV show going out onto 4 or 5 different platforms, but they have a very different approach to each one.
How they look different? Or?
Yeah, so obviously, TikTok and Snap, it's vertical and it's cut together. The way with Snap, obviously, the habit of people wanting to tap very quickly at the start, make sure you're telling your story and you're keeping them there and they can't skip through the core points.
She's going, I love this.
We rehearsed that backstage. So there's that, and then also, it's understanding how to best approach them. I think TikTok's been really interesting because, Facebook, ultimately the viewing has plateaued over a 2-year period in their way of pivoting, and I think in H2 of last year, we saw the similar thing on YouTube, but with the change to Shorts. And with Reels on Facebook and Instagram, there definitely has been a proactive approach to kind of not just imitate, but improve on their offering. And I think what's really great about the likes of, with Facebook and YouTube is, yes, they do Reels and Shorts, but it's one of many different products. So making sure that you embrace and understand it means that, we are pivoting and we are changing. There are ways of reaching very specific younger demographics with the likes of shorter vertical video, but that's not necessarily just at the cost of the long-form options and stuff like that. So
we were going to talk about what content works and what doesn't work. So I want to come to Lucy in a second, but I want to ask you a question first that might pivot to Lucy. There was a show What in the World? Wasn't that your show, Channel 4's show? Was it called What in the World? I thought it was called What in the World. It was launched in January. It has nearly 130,000 subscribers. Who told me that? Was that you? Somebody told me. Todd, give me an example. Give me an example of something that worked and that worked on Snap or wherever it worked, or YouTube, and why you think it worked. And then we'll get Lucy to say, well, of course it worked like that because we did this.
I'll show you a couple of examples in a bit.
Oh, good.
But I would say we've got a really interesting example of a show called Tattoo Fixers, which doesn't actually air on E4 anymore, but we have found a way to bring that to a new younger audience on Snapchat. It is huge. So
it's the same show, but it's
reformatted and reversioned and reintroduced to a whole new audience.
And you did the whole thing and then gave it to her, or did she help you do it? I mean, how did Snap, how did the
I would
interchange
love
work?
to take so much credit for this. But no, I don't want to, Matt's team already know how to edit for Snap. So that really helped. But what we saw in that show is this kind of before and after transformational content. They edit it amazingly that it gets straight to the point, and straight to the action, so that everyone knows there's a transformation that's going to happen, then they want to watch the rest of the episode on Snap to see the how, the who, what, how, where, when. Making my journalism training there. And so that's become a great case study where I think you internally with your team and Joe and that, can we get more of this show because it is doing well, and you're not just commissioning 5 episodes. It's like we're seeing that it's not only reaching new audiences, but also it's getting commercial return because we then in turn sell the ads and commercials that go in there. So.
It's that interactivity that's kind of important, right? I mean, I don't know if you have a view on that. But is that important, that Lucy's kind of saying, well, they want more and this is how they use it, so maybe we do something different because we see how they're using it?
Yeah, certainly. So I think one of the things we pride ourselves on at YouTube is how sort of robust the data and the analytics are in the back end. And so we do our best to make it really clear very quickly if content is connecting, if it's working, how it's working, who it's working with, and frankly, where it's working with, down to, as of now, even cities within the UK or certain markets. So we try to give as much of that sort of, and base those decisions on data, because at the end of the day, YouTube sits within Google and it is a data-driven organization. So we try to look at a lot of that to then understand sort of who's responding to what, and is that aligned with your goals? And if it's not, how do we start to support you in either a pivot toward the direction you want to be in, or how do we help you double down if it's exactly what you wanted to see?
Can you think of an example of where you really help somebody pivot?
Yeah, certainly.
A show or a series or something?
Yeah, so I think actually Channel 4 is a really good example of also one who sort of came to us and initially, prior to them really embracing YouTube from a monetization standpoint, sort of had 3 or 4 channels, and they sort of had varying degrees of sort of attention on them. But it was really, let's just focus on our one main hub. And I think over time they've realized that actually a big part of what happens on YouTube is also audiences start to find identities and niches that they want to work with. And so they've then gone and broken out those different niches to talk to people who are interested in lifestyle content, or if it's more youth skewing content. So being able to break that out so that, again, you're constantly sort of cultivating, again, the conversation, whether that's comments, community, and you're building a sort of back and forth with a group that you're not trying to say it's a buffet and you'll just have some things you'll like, some things you won't. And ITV, to their credit, also was pretty fast to embrace that and actually approached from a channel strategy based on show, right? So This Morning has had its own dedicated, and who would have thought that the sensation of YouTube from ITV would be its morning programming, right? So that and Good Morning Britain do really well for them.
And people don't watch it in the morning, or do they watch it in the morning?
They watch it sort of time shifted.
Yeah, see?
And in fact, I remember a funny story. A friend of mine, her younger sister was asked a few years ago who her favorite YouTube creators are, and she said Holly and Phil. She thought those were her YouTube creators. So.
Yeah, see, that's the switch that we're getting. Young people who that's their first interaction with Holly and Phil. It's not on the big TV screen. So I'm going to ask one question more to you guys, then I want you to come back and show your clips. You both, Snap and YouTube, have relatively recently closed your originals divisions, right? You're not actually making originals anymore. What is that all about? Lucy first, and then I mean, is it because you don't want to compete with people that you're working with? What happened?
I mean, I can speak for Snapchat. You know, we would this is very much a pilot in the UK of testing with a handful of shows. And it works really well for us in terms of learning that best practice. You know, what really makes a good show, because we've made it ourselves, it's our IP. And, you know...
You were commissioning content.
We were commissioning, exactly, and it was never going to be a long-term strategy. This was very much
it was just a kind of a prime the pump type thing. Okay, was it the same for you two?
So for us, actually...
Because you did it for longer.
Yeah, so if those in the audience are aware, there's something called YouTube Premium, which is effectively a sort of, really it's a feature set, which allows you to enjoy YouTube without ads, background, offline, sort of very technical things. But we also thought, well, part of offering sort of and charging for that should be, well, should we do what the Netflixes and the Primes of the world at that time were sort of doing, and should there be some slightly more elevated premium content that lives behind that paywall?
Like Cobra Kai.
Exactly. And frankly, also things where we went to large YouTube creators who had ambitions and visions, but sort of didn't have the financial wherewithal to take the risk.
Well, PewDiePie doesn't really go into that category because he had a lot of financial.
Would he want to spend his own money on it? Who knows? But the end of...
PewDiePie's a gamer, if you don't know. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and he had a show called, I think it was Scare PewDiePie, or PewDiePie Scares. And that's exactly what happened in every one. I had nothing to do with the... But I think ultimately, at the risk of sounding very bland, the data proved that that was actually not what was going to drive the actual uptake of premium. It was those features. It was the ability to have YouTube Music. And so over time, you look at that, and as a large organization that's got 2 billion monthly users coming through, unlike, I think, some of those other more SVOD platforms who have to constantly be thinking about why would someone keep paying for this, it was sort of a separate piece of the business.
Got it. That's a good explanation. So let me come back to you now. I want you to show your clips. What content are we talking about? These are originals, yeah?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of stuff. So harking back to the 3 pillars, the first clip is actually a marketing kind of related piece of content. It's an extension of one of our linear shows. It's a short form series commissioned and made for short form platforms first. It's called Hollyoaks IRL. And essentially, it was kind of a way to try to create content that was unbound by the kind of conformity of having to fit a certain kind of length or schedule slot, and focused on really deepening the fan experience. So we wanted to take fans who loved Hollyoaks and give them more of what they loved through a different lens, and also try to bring new people to it by kind of getting them to understand there's more to Hollyoaks than what they may think. So I'll show the clip in a second. A bit of a trigger warning. The series is basically talking about, we speak to contributors, real life people who have been deeply affected by the themes in the show. This clip is actually about somebody who watched a storyline about a character who died by suicide, and the impact it had on their friends and their family in the show really deeply impacted this person in real life.
What made me tune into Hollyoaks on that day? I don't know. I literally... If I hadn't seen that episode that day, I wouldn't be here now talking to you. I'd be dead. And I'm so thankful that I did watch it, because it saved my life.
It's an incredibly powerful kind of series. It was nominated for a BAFTA, which was very nice. But it kind of shows how you can play with form and extend a show that people think they know in a different way in digital.
And also interact with the audience. I mean, my God, right? Okay.
The next clip is a branded series. So kind of funded by a brand. It was funded by Visit Britain, who came to us with the intention of trying to make people aware that you could go on accessible holidays in the UK. So we took that, did a very Channel 4 thing. We took Rosie Jones, who is a queer, disabled comedian, and sent her around the UK doing lots of silly things. So this is a clip from that.
Rosie, what's going on? Travelling when you're disabled can be a right pain in the bum bum. But luckily, Mama is here to help. You'll get.
Feel very upper class right now.
We're back and we're doing cities. This is mission accessible.
And that's a perfect example of the kind of content we want to make in that space. You know, you see other people being funded by Cadbury's cream eggs and throwing 732 references to cream eggs in a piece of content. That feels like a Channel 4 piece of content that's funded by a brand and carries the messages they want to get across. That's perfect. And then the last piece of content is a clip from a digital original, which is a series that we are commissioning purely for social platforms. It has digital-first creators, a digital-first format. This is a clip from something that will be coming out very soon. It's called It's All Right to Be White, with Alhen Genjai, who, if you are young, you would probably know. I did not know him when I first heard about him, but he's brilliant. He's a YouTuber, content creator, entrepreneur. I could tee it up, but the clip does the talking, so...
My name is Alhen Genjai, a beige man on a mission to discover the whitest tribes of Britain and understand their curious ways. Join me and my friends as we bravely step foot outside of London and meet the native peoples of this green and pleasant land to find out if it's all right to be white.
Tomorrow, you're going to be introduced to the Bards of Glastonbury and their order. And you are quested to bring a bard with you, someone worthy. The more renown, the better. And then I will raise them in Glastonbury.
Mission accepted, big dog.
I want you to bring a notable bard, someone who can kick some butt.
Does it matter if he's not white?
Yeah, there are all sorts of coloured pagans.
I've only seen white people today.
Yeah.
I think we all lived through 8 to 10 years ago the moment where broadcasters tried to get kind of YouTubers and whack them in a linear format and just hope it worked. It didn't. The content wasn't great. The audiences didn't move from one space to another. What we're trying to do with this kind of content is really meet that community and that kind of content in the middle.
In their space.
Completely.
Right? I mean, go to the audience. Don't try to drag them back, as I said before. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but YouTubers don't necessarily want to be on television. They actually like their platform usually. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Lucy, I mean, do you find that the kind of content that works on Snap, I mean, YouTubers, I mean, you don't have YouTubers, but you have creators.
Yeah, I've worked with many YouTubers over the years, and I remember a lot of them saying to me, we just don't watch TV. Like, what is a TV? I think it's interesting what you say now. Now they're great. Some of the older ones, I'd say, are looking back to TV for more kind of, again, business opportunities through getting a presenter gig or appearing on Strictly or whatever it is.
Right.
Because they're realizing that, you know, there's more money to be made by diversifying. But yeah, you're right. We are seeing a lot more Snap stars who are Snapchat first creators coming through.
I like that, Snapchat first creators. Say that 3 times fast.
Snap stars.
Snap stars. That's good.
Yeah, and the creator side of the business is something that I'm spending a lot more time working on myself in commissioning or curating content from YouTubers that are now bringing their content to Snapchat.
Yeah, yeah. So James, when you look at this, I mean, we talked before, you mentioned a little bit, but is there a right time to do social? Is there a new way to think about audiences? I mean, what is where are we now? And sort of, because I think this is evolving. It's not been a static story.
Yeah, and I think that for the most part, kind of broadcasters understand the importance of it, and you know, production companies kind of know that they should be embracing social. I think what often is undervalued is leaning into the fan first content, becoming a super fan of it, and allowing it to be weird, to have its own sense of humour, to have a brand that sits outside of what would be the traditional purpose of the show on air. A really good example of this is like Kitchen Nightmares. We haven't had Kitchen Nightmares on air or on TV for quite some time, and when it was made, you know, it's Gordon Ramsay screaming at people because he doesn't like their flan or whatever. But what we've managed to turn the online...
A lot of F word,
yeah, there's lots of that. What we've managed to turn the online kind of presence on is so separate from what it was when it originally was on TV. So it's very fan-focused. It's a lot of humour, a lot of Gen Z, millennial kind of jokes, memes, and to the point where, you know, we've had live streams that is just a microwave just going for about 3 hours. And
it's microwave?
Like, Chef Mike.
Chef Mike.
Chef Mike. And it's the top 10 hits of Chef Mike, and it's just a microwave playing. And people are like, I fucking love this. and they really enjoy it. And we've had like a whole rabbit hole where we made all these kind of hidden videos. If you clicked on this, it took you to an unlisted video, and it's all these really weird things. And it was mainly the editor just had the freedom to lean into the community, go onto Reddit, how are they talking to each other, look at the fan-made content, how can we emulate that? And it's that thing of like, there's a conversation going on, and if you do it right, you can become part of the conversation. And if you nail it, you lead the conversation. So you are the leader, voice of that brand. And I think the way in which it's evolved is we have a lot more fun with it. It's a lot more fun. It's fun for the editors. It's fun for the people, like the fans. It's fun for the, it's fun in the meetings when you're like, hey, the viewing's off the chart and we're making loads of revenue and it's really fun and this is, and even like we had some examples where it was, again, an accident. We had a live stream that was meant to be a documentary about beekeeping on Discovery, but it just looped about 3 seconds of bees. And again, loads of people were like, what are they telling us? And the viewing went through the roof, and we're like, no, leave it. Just
leave the bees.
Leave the bees, let it play. And and it was, and articles were written about it, and people were like, what is this release about? And we were like, no, we fucked up, but we just rolled with it. But I guess the way you evolve it, social media's fun. It's meant to be fun. So like, make it fun when you're working on it.
Yeah. Do you find, anyone can answer this except you, do you find that you usually work with broadcasters mostly, or do you work with independent production companies, or do you do, the creator type stuff? I mean, has there been a shift there? Why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, so we aim to support basically everyone within the ecosystem, right? Because they will have different goals, and frankly, they'll have different rights. So the person
different rights, of course.
The person who's in a position to take advantage of that sort of next day water cooler conversation might be the broadcaster, and the person who's sort of focused on how do they get somebody excited about a show coming back on air, again, probably the broadcaster. Right. But over time, what will happen is actually when it's not on air, understandably, they move on to their other priorities. But that production company and that production entity that we work with closely often is the one who steps in and sort of says, I'm going to keep this conversation and this community alive. So that's something that's valuable, not just for them from a revenue perspective, because ultimately those are their rights, more often than not. But it's also valuable for that renewal come next year, which is people haven't forgotten about this format.
I still have an audience.
Yeah. In fact, the audience is bigger than it was when you went off the air.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, there's a bigger audience in these other markets, so why don't you go sell it some other places?
So we have a case study of that. We work with Sony, and there is an Italian version of The Nanny called La Tata, and it hadn't been broadcast for over a decade. And we started building the community on Facebook and YouTube, and due to the success of that, an Italian broadcasters rebought the programming rights, and so it's back on air off the back of the success we've seen across social. So, annoyingly, we don't get a cut of that commission, but
that's too bad.
But it's an amazing case study that shows, it's not just about building that audience there. It can lead to much larger conversations and much more fruitful consequences.
I'm going to open up to questions in a minute. So if you have any questions, or if you have one right now, put your hand up. And otherwise, I'm going to go on to my last set of questions. Yeah, do you have one? And you have one? Okay, so we have some mics somewhere. Here they come. This lady with the pink. And then Teresa has a question, too. It should be on.
Hi, my name is Anne Lear. I work on the international scene on digital copyright and artificial intelligence, and I have a question that's about the business model, and I wonder if you could say something more about the revenue sharing and the business model that you use between broadcasters, rights holders, and Snapchat, because of course you come from very different cultures. And also in terms of regulation, you come from very different cultures. And in Geneva, we have a problem defining you.
Defining you?
If we're going to have an international trade agreement in the creative industries, we need to know whether a platform is a broadcaster or a broadcaster is a platform, because this has to be developed in international law. So it would be very helpful if you could explain in detail a bit more about the business model, revenue sharing, so who takes what.
Thank you.
Who takes what of the pie?
We're going to do our best on that, but I'm going to ask you to hand that mic to Teresa. And just while you're thinking about your question, Obviously, you're not going to disclose your commercial terms, but can you just kind of talk about what basically it is? Revenue share with ads? What's the...
Yeah, so if you're a Discover partner and you're uploading video, actually uploading any content, we'll have a rev share back with the partner. So that's how we make revenue. Unless obviously you're a public service broadcaster, we won't monetize that content. Yeah.
Do revenue share, or do you pay for rights? Yeah, he just said revenue share.
Yeah,
revenue share off the advertising.
With the advertiser, yeah.
She's not going to tell you the percentage. Okay? So Neil, what's the YouTube? Same thing?
YouTube is a revenue share, and the way that is set up is sort of, we look at it basically from the channel owner. So to your question of who ultimately is the person who's providing that content to us, they're ultimately the person who ultimately has the choice to monetize or not and take advantage of that. So if that's the broadcaster or the production entity, not to go into the weeds, there's a whole way in which in the back end one can share sort of access to a piece of content and therefore see a share of that revenue share. So it starts to get incredibly complicated as you start to have that rights position, but we sort of go to quite lengthy extremes to make sure that we're recognizing that. So if you'd like to talk about afterwards, we can talk about Content ID, which is how people deal with things like their user uploading content that matches theirs, right? And how
they own the rights to.
Yeah. This is yours. What would you like to do with it? And
either have them take it down or you monetize it. Yeah.
And to add to that, so I helped set up the Content ID team at Little Dot, and I'm a massive nerd about how it works and really enjoy it. But it's really malleable. So we work with lots of rights holders that might have international rights but won't have US or something like that. You can segment it, and a big journey that we've had over the last kind of 7 years that we've kind of had an active Content ID team, I would say, is changing the narrative of, like, if it's fan-orientated content, don't look at it as piracy. Look at it as additive to the community. You don't, like, if they're uploading full-length episodes, yeah, take it down. You know, they're eating into your rights. But if it's something that's a super compilation that someone's clearly poured hours into and it adds something to that, you shouldn't necessarily be taking that down. You should claim it, you can monetize it, the revenue goes back to the rights holder, collected on an individual video basis. So it's very, very detailed. But it also helps inform the data of the viewing. Okay, so people are loving it. Where are they watching it? Should we be making similar content? Should we be dubbing it in that kind of language? It actually is really useful data that can pull back, and it's very thorough because you got sued by music labels years ago. So,
exactly.
So yeah, they are very, yeah.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very, very thorough.
Do you have something to say about this? Not really.
Can't really add much more other than Channel 4's business model is quite unique in regards to how we work with independent production companies, but essentially we have complicated rights positions on every piece of content and every kind of show. So we have commercial terms with platforms, and then we kind of navigate through that with producer payaways or exploitation of that content, either in the UK or globally. It's quite complicated.
Teresa.
Thanks, Kate. I guess it's more to James, this question. Would you do work which involves a fee for success? In other words,
So we've got commercial deals where there are benchmarking involved and stuff like that, but ultimately, as with the disruptive force of, say, TikTok coming into the market, it's very hard to dictate and say, you know, we're definitely going to hit these numbers for the year. I think ultimately, we're very transparent in our partnerships with people, and I guess partnerships kind of a cheesy way of putting it, but that's how we communicate with a lot of our partners. We say, like, this is a mutual venture. We will try to get to this. Obviously, more views, more revenue, you know, thumbs up type thing. But, you know, we don't ever guarantee it because it's not guaranteed. You might have the best show in the world, but the audience isn't quite there going for it for whatever reason. And you never really know what is going to pop. Like, our fastest growing TikTok account for a long time was River Monsters, and it's a show about fishing. And everyone's like, it's the youth platform fishing. So, you know, like, you just never really know what the landscape is definitely going to be. But no, don't hold me to those numbers. I can't guarantee it.
Did that include a loop of fish for 2 seconds?
We did one called Drop in the Bass. Yeah, it was pretty cheesy.
You don't do performance-based work, do you? You don't. I mean, in other words, would you say to a client or a broadcaster, if we get blah blah snaps, you know, you get more money? I mean, is that how that?
No.
No.
We can guarantee benchmarking if there's willing to be media spend involved, and you're like, we want to fund a certain amount and we need to hit this benchmark. We're doing some really interesting things in the family space in terms of building brands online first and how we can utilise both kind of organic growth, paid growth, and understanding hitting certain demographics. One of my favourite kind of case studies we had when we worked closely with Michael McIntyre, he did a tour in the US and he wanted to guarantee that he could sell tickets in New York, and we sold out his tour in a month, and he gave us a 9-month runway. So, it was great. We're like, oh, we've got this amazing thing, and then the pandemic happened and comedy stopped, and we couldn't really utilise that case study for a couple of years. But it was a good one.
I think I'm going to re-answer your question about helping partners with performance.
Yes, please.
We do spend a lot of time trying to help broadcasters understand their data, which we've talked about a bit on the panel, because obviously if you hit a certain number of engagement or unique viewers, that should translate to more revenue. So my team do spend quite a lot of time helping partners navigate those numbers.
Because it's a different kind of space if you're coming from the broadcaster space, or certainly from the independent production space, or even further back from that sort of reality, so to speak. So you'd have to do a lot of education on that, probably.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what's next. I mean, Lucy, you talked about, what are some of the cool things that Snap's going to do? And obviously it's all in this sort of vertical format, right? But, we've got all this new tech coming, AR and things like that. Talk about what's next for kind of content things we could be seeing.
I think for everyone in this room, we need to start with that kind of crawling and walking scenario, which Matt talked about earlier. It's kind of making sure that when you're thinking about commissioning some content, that you have someone representing the digital space and understands it. If you can get in that early, it really, really will help you think about the edit and what content you're going to syndicate to the platforms, or if you're going to work with a company like Little Dot to sort of get that IP onto social. And then, we talk to a lot of our partners now about AR because it is sort of a relatively new, cool thing. So that is an exciting arm of my role of supporting broadcasters and thinking about what are the extra things they can do to engage with their community through a lens, whether we now got the date of the coronation coming up, so I'll be talking to some of my news publishers about, do we do a lens with a crown that, people, I mean, that's just an idea I came up with.
They could look through there.
Yeah, but,
put the crown on someone else.
Yeah.
Not on Charles. That would be controversial.
Yeah, but, just ways of helping some of the more traditional formats have a bit more engagement through using lenses, and it is incredibly accessible. Much more accessible than when I first started out in that space. There are kind of kids I know that are creating lenses for Snap. So, so that's another layer. But I think for now, we start with the crawling and the walking of making sure that there are people within the commissioning team that understand how to edit.
What's happening at YouTube?
So I think one of the things we take pride in, part of that is probably our tenure in the space, but there's a number of platforms where you can be famous. There's not very many where you can be famous and rich. YouTube is one of those. And so I think, if we're honest, we see the incredible user interest and engagement in very short-form content. And so something we announced a few weeks ago was the sort of plans as of next year to start monetizing the short feed on YouTube with ads and have an ad rev on that. So again, whether you are a creator or a partner who is native to those short-form storytelling in a vertical, can YouTube now be the platform where actually you're able to do more than just have fun and or build an audience, but also monetize that audience? So that's really, I think, the piece that's, with all due respect to also this group, probably going to be a learning curve, right? Is also having to work on a journey with all of the broadcasters and production companies of what works in that space.
Because the short feed, just to explain what that is.
So the short feed is a lot like what you would experience on TikTok, right? So it's under 60 seconds. It has like, dislike, comment, subscribe. So it's great for driving subscribers, but currently it doesn't monetize. So great for engagement. But again, if you come to YouTube with a commercial return in mind, you're mostly focused on the VOD side, right?
This is, again, where TikTok has disrupted your business model, and you're going to have to catch up with TikTok.
Right, and again, I think it's also responding and saying there's clearly an audience interest and appetite there. So how do we take what we've got, which is a strong monetization engine, to sort of superpower that and make it an exciting place to be?
So, Matt, what about C4 Studios? I mean, you sort of mentioned there might be something new coming down the pike. What's that all about? What can you tell us about
Yeah,
that?
I can't quite reveal it, but definitely, I know, really annoying, sorry.
We won't tell anyone.
Sick. No, within the next month, we will be talking quite loudly about a very youth-focused digital content strategy that we're rolling out. That's been in the pipeline for a while. It's very exciting, and we hope it will do big things, but I think...
Is it another platform or another digital, when you say digital
Couldn't
content?
possibly say, no. Social first, social talent, social ideas.
Social first, social talent, social ideas. Write that down.
I think as well, to call to what Neil was saying, you know, it feels like we keep saying we're in a brave new world, everything's changing. It's a brave new world every 6 months. Right?
Yeah.
TikTok is the biggest thing now. It may not exist in 2 years. Who knows? It'll be something else. So I think just kind of having agility within your strategy, thinking longer term and working out how to work with these platforms, because for the most part, they're not going away, and there are really interesting ways you can collaborate with them, but understanding that this landscape does constantly change, and you need to work out how to navigate that.
Yeah, those two. So, James, when you look at what's coming or what's new, and maybe you could focus a little bit about who's doing best in terms of brand monetization on some of these platforms working with broadcaster content, or what kind of partnerships are we seeing? I mean, what are you seeing around that kind of space? And maybe some other people will have some views on that.
What's coming down the pipe? I mean, as kind of Matt said, it is changing every 6 months, and it's either, you kind of look at it as it's either exhausting or it's exciting. Sometimes both. But I think that, you know, in terms of what that means, it's very exciting in the challenges that it proposes and how you have to adapt your strategy and how we can kind of evolve that. And I think that allows us to look at new monetization opportunities and new ways to kind of approach kind of 10-year-old shows and new shows and things like that. In terms of who's doing it best, I'm sure my CEO would make me say we are.
I mean, in terms of like brands, like are brands doing it better than the broadcasters in terms of thinking about content on social?
I would say that.
So why do you think?
I would say, like, you know, like C4 Studio did an incredible job, and I think that, you know, broadcasters are adapting to it and are waking up at different levels. I think some brands get it amazing. You've got stuff like Foot Asylum that make incredible digital native content with talent, really meaningful, you know, and it's amazing how they're approaching it. You've got other brands that they are so far behind. In conversations where you're having, you're like, come with us on this journey. I think that, you know, we've got a really fantastic team dedicated to brand, headed by our director of brand strategy, Jade Rard, and she has a wonderful way of kind of describing it and saying, when she's talking to brands, it's like, you need to stop renting audience and just throwing money at this. You need to own the audience, have a location that they want to come back to, and it's meaningful. So if you are doing a paid campaign, you've had an organic campaign that's 6 months prior, so when you spend that money, it's much more meaningful and it has momentum and you know, additive quality to it. So we are having those conversations with brands, and I think some of them are really waking up to the opportunities that are there. But in terms of TV, I think that, you know, you've got some real stars in all aspects, really.
Lucy, when you talked about the brands, are you finding it's a similar conversation that some of them get it and some of them don't? And are they bringing the broadcasters along with them, or are the broadcasters dragging the brands in? I mean, how's it all kind of working?
A mixture of both, but one thing that's exciting in the UK, because I used to work at Meta before coming to Snap, is at Snapchat, similar to YouTube, we do give some partners the rights to sell against their own content.
Okay.
So that's just a win-win situation, because someone like ITV will have the brands that they know and work with.
That's right.
They can just sponsor their content with that brand, and we all get along very nicely. So it is moving in the right direction, I'd say.
That's cool. That's cool. Is there other questions? Yes, good. We have one. Oh, good. More hands. So there's one back there and one here. Let's go here first. Do we have two mics or just one? Joe, can you give that mic to this man there? Yeah, go ahead.
Great talk. Andrew Eborn, Octopus TV. Twitter. We haven't mentioned at all in this ever-changing
let's talk
landscape.
about Elon Musk. Come on.
No, exactly. I thought Elon Musk and his proposal to talk about X and the Everything app. What do you think? What's going to happen about Twitter? What's the best advice you'll give to Elon, assuming he goes ahead?
Oh, goodness.
You go first.
Go ahead. You go.
Oh, God. I have no...
That, by the way, you're right.
Right, fine. I have no idea where that is going to go. It's fascinating. I mean, the journey of how they've got to this point in the first time has been unpredictable. So seeing what he actually does with that is going to be fascinating, and what that does to the audience. I think if he does some of the things that he's talking about, you're going to have a real Tumblr moment of somebody going, this is what we should do with this thing, and the entire audience deserting it.
Yep.
So that's going to be interesting.
That's the phrase, a Tumblr moment. Very good. It could happen. I mean, you know, Twitter hasn't really been known. We haven't really mentioned Twitter because it isn't really known as a video platform as much. James?
Yeah, so I would say that, as I said kind of earlier, like majority of my partnerships, the main core focus is driving revenue from the rights in which they hold, and the nature in which Twitter's monetizable kind of offering around video, it's very different to the other models that the other platforms utilise, and it's not very cohesive with the way that we operate. We've tried multiple times to see if it can work, but I don't have the energy to. So we've focused on the ones that actually work with us on it. So we do social media management. We've done running Twitter accounts in a very typical social media manager way, but in terms of it being a video-focused platform, they don't seem to focus on it, so nor do we.
And I won't get you to talk. No. Okay. Another question here. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Hi.
Is there another question?
Beyond the broadcasters just serving up really compelling content to the platforms, how much of a show's success is dependent on the extent to which audiences can then interact with that content? I'm assuming quite a lot, but it'd be great to hear if you've got the examples of sort of exemplars in that space.
So how important is interaction with the audience for the content to actually sing or to work really well?
So I can go first?
Yeah.
So I often think about it, which is what commissioners and writers and creatives do in the confines of their 22 to 48 minutes, or if you're in sort of streaming, maybe you have a little bit more flexibility, is incredible. But they still are budget constrained. They still have to focus on that story. And then they're telling the arc that they need to tell. But then there's the reality, which is where do you go to continue that conversation? And that's where actually I still think there's room for improvement from a lot of broadcasters and brands, which is actually right now creators fill that space. So everyday people are the ones who are actually the ones giving you their recap, their analysis of that episode, what that meant, what that revelation was, whether that's about a mystery, whether it's about rings of power. You end up with these incredible pieces of content that do bring everyone together. But again, I think what's hard is that that conversation often doesn't continue on the sort of owned and operated platforms. Mm-hmm. So I think to the degree with which a broadcaster can start to try to think about what are those shoulder formats or shoulder content, we might say, how do I continue that so that actually I continue to be the place where this is happening, is one of the things that I always try to help partners think about and conceptualize.
Do you have an example of one that's worked or that's a little bit? Or
so, I mean, it's an unfair example because it's massive. So it's not fair to always say, oh, just do what Game of Thrones did.
Yeah.
But
they're good examples.
They're about as good as you get, right? A massive channel. And we're talking serious budgets allocated to shoulder content, behind the scenes, taking people into the sort of minutia of the costuming and other things, right? Building that world. But I also think you have to think about sort of how do you have something like Trevor Noah on The Daily Show would have something called sort of, frankly, Between Takes, right? And actually he had a digital-only format that just was like, here's when we're on commercial, and he would just keep talking to the audience. And he could, because he was a stand-up comedian. And that's the kind of thing where, again, it's creating that sort of piece that says, actually, even though this isn't about the broadcast, this is about still how we continue to have that conversation with you in a format that feels personal, social.
I've got quite a fun, inexpensive example. So we worked
Inexpensive, good.
No, comparatively, it's not Game of Thrones, an hour-long documentary about the costumes. So we worked with Amazon Prime Video and the Grand Tour, and around Clarkson's farm, we made a shoulder piece of content of him applying to become Farmer of the Year.
I can imagine that he would do that, yes.
He loved it, and that video did better organically than the official trailer for Clarkson's farm.
Oh my God.
So You know, and it's very inexpensive format that we kind of filmed alongside it, and we work closely with Amazon on what were the similar kind of shoulder pieces of content that we can make original. And most of the time, that is obviously a very good example, but like most of the time we kind of say it's never going to, like, you're dreaming if you think you're going to recoup the investment you're making on that shoulder content, but the meaningful fan engagement and the value that that brings outside of the monetary value is far greater, and that's why you're investing in it.
Okay. Other question? You had a second question. Is there another question, or did we give her? Yes, go ahead.
Just a very quick question about risk. Broadcasters have been around for a very long time, the BBC for 100 years and Channel 4 for many, many years as well. The world of platforms and big tech is moving very fast and very rapidly, and ownership, as the Twitter question illustrated, changes very rapidly in an instant. I can't help but notice all the American accents on the table in the panel, and all the big platform companies are owned by American interests, not by the UK or any European interests, with the exception of Spotify. What about TikTok? You talk a lot about TikTok. TikTok is being banned in several countries. It's owned by the Chinese. Do Channel 4 do any risk analysis about who you partner with?
Yeah, very much so. Before we get into bed, philosophically, with any of the platforms, we do due diligence and look at the landscape and risk assess, essentially. I think TikTok of all of them is a very interesting one, but I also think if your strategies are trying to work out how you can reach your audiences where they are and engage them, to ignore TikTok is mad. You can't. But we are tracking it, you know, with all these things. As the landscape changes, we'll reassess it. But right now, we willfully decided to start publishing on there, and that's where we're at.
Anybody else want to know? Any last question? One there? Yep. This is going to be our last question, I think.
Hi, it's a question for James. I teach a film production course, undergraduate BA students, and actually I think 3 of our fairly recent graduates are editing at Little Dot.
And they're happy?
As far as I know.
Phew!
You know, they did 10-minute long final graduation films, and we say we're getting them set ready and all that kind of stuff. And clearly they're going off into all different fields. And I just wonder what you're looking for. What does a new graduate, and ours is a film production degree rather than a digital media one, what are you looking for?
So we don't necessarily even require people to have degrees. It's a passion and an ability to edit, be creative in their approach, and really care about the content. I think that's something that shines through. We have a very rigid process when we're interviewing, that there are set parameters and a score out of 10 on all of these to make sure that we can be as fair and equitable in all of that process. But ultimately, I think what really shines through is that they have understood, you know, we've got multiple different services and departments. So if you're coming into it's a job within the entertainment team, and all you're talking about is sport, you're like, you didn't read the brief. So like making sure they're applying, they know what they're going for, they've researched it, but they really care, and that, you know, they might not necessarily care about the particular show that they're going to work on, but the fact that they understand how social works, how people interact, they can, you know, and they show an acumen for editing. We often have an edit task that we'll present to them, and they have to give back, and that is, you know, how we judge it. But to be honest, I haven't been in an editor interview for about kind of quite a few years now, but that has always been the thing that I permeate through the team. And it's a wanky phrase, but like the mantra we've got is like, run it like a fan. I want people that are fans. I want people that are passionate. And I think that's the kind of core thing we look for.
Do you guys have?
I mean, to James's point, we've recruited a very large, very young team up Leeds, up around Yorkshire, which
How many are there now up there?
By the end of this year, we're hoping for 150.
150?
Between salespeople, digital commissioners, content creatives, social media managers, data people, it's kind of the whole shebang. But the people that we've hired in the creative space, you want people, to James's point, who care about these platforms and spend a lot of time on them. I think that's half the battle. You can teach someone a good technical skill, but the creative comes naturally, and then an understanding of the platform, which you need to layer on top, comes from people who spend all their time on these platforms anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll add to that, we don't have a production team at Snap, but at Meta we did. And I'd interview graduates coming through, and I wanted them to understand the content management systems as well, you know, understand how to see their content is performing and why, by looking at numbers and So yeah, just get them to research that before going into interview as well.
Yeah, so we don't do any of the sort of in-house production. It's all sort of from our partners who upload to the platform. But I do think that I can sort of just echo what everyone said, which is you can take somebody who has been in the industry and has a lot of experience and say, digital's where it's happening now, figure it out. And you can also put them basically on a track with the same person who sort of, this is what I consume all day, and watch how fast that person who just consumes that all day and who knows the language of the platform. And this is the thing that I work with and talk with so many people in the room at the broadcasters and production companies is, it's not that your content isn't interesting to this audience, it's just how are you packaging it in a way that feels also, frankly, native to them in the way they're thinking about it. So the way you title it, the way you create a thumbnail, right? So much of it has to sort of, you have to sort of leave behind sort of that EPG sort of idea of, I think I've heard of this program, or I can read the description and I understand it. Sort of things are happening much faster, whether you realize it or not cognitively. And so how are you getting advantage of that sort of fast-paced thinking?
So we didn't rehearse this, but to leave the audience with a piece of content that you think they should watch that would help them understand your platform or you think was really cool, pick something. Lucy, can you think of something?
A show that I love at the moment. I feel really bad because I've got two of my partners here.
Well, you can say somebody else if you want. I'll just kill you later.
One I'm currently enjoying is called Goals Talk. It's by Copper 90. They've done a magazine-style show around women's football, and I think the way that they packaged it together and edited it for Snap is.
And it's called
Goals Talk. So instead of Girls Talk, it's Goals Talk, but it's women's football.
Oh, great!
It's very
Open-minded.
current, very it's around the Euros. It was launched and. It's just it's a really interesting magazine-style show they've done in video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from my side, may I have two?
Oh, of course you can have two. Quickly, though.
So very quickly, one that may be lost on many people in the room, but it's worth a Google, would be the Sidemen charity match, which was massive, and I want to say the numbers were, I think it was one of the only times the stadium they played in had been sold out in many, many years. So the audience in person, not only, and then the audience digitally, massive, massive engagement around creators coming together, all for charity, and frankly, using the most traditional of things, which is sort of sport, and being all very non-traditional creators.
What was it called?
So it's the Sidemen is the name of the collective of these creators, and they have this charity match every year, and this year was sort of unprecedented in its sort of impact. And then quickly, no offense to our beloved fellow panelists, but BBC Reel is a wonderful, wonderful YouTube channel, which is all about sort of what I really love about YouTube also, which is about sort of just that place where you go to be curious, to ask questions and to learn. I learned all about the lost and found system in Japan. How you will always get an umbrella back there. Fascinating. And you can do all that in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Right. James, what's a cool piece of content you'd pick
from
one of your clients?
So it's tough. There's quite a lot happening. I suppose something I've really enjoyed recently, it's similar to the Clarksville Farm example, is Community, the Sony comedy, they're finally going to have a film, and there's been so many little fan references peppered throughout their 6 seasons, and all of the editors are such manic fans of it, and the number of really subtle like TikToks and shorts and compilations and stuff like that has been made, not because the client asked for them, but the editors were like, we're going to build this runway of all this stuff around the promotion around the film, and it's just blown up, and the client is just overwhelmed with the fact that it's like, they didn't even ask us, we just went, we've built you 400 pieces of content. And it's like, why? And it's like, because they couldn't sleep. Like, the editors couldn't sleep, they wanted to do it, here you go.
So this is Sony comedy?
It's a Sony comedy called Community, and just, it was more that it's not even the numbers on the video itself, it's just the happiness in the editors' faces when they told me they'd done it, and they're like, and this link, and this link, and this link. And you're like, it's a Saturday. I think that just because
perfectly encapsulates how.
That's perfect.
Yeah, how funny it is.
What about you?
We've got two very quickly. One is called The Bait, which is a short-form satirical scripted comedy show. The clue is in the title. It is kind of a parody of current affairs. There's one episode of that that's gone out very recently is about how you can now hire people to hug you in winter because that's cheaper than the energy crisis. But it's played very straight and, unsurprisingly, does incredibly in regards to shareability and engagement, but also the people who get the joke. And then we have, if you want an example of taking a linear show and that exploding online, a very recent comedy show that we've commissioned called Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.
Yeah.
It's completely insane. It is brilliant. And that started as a YouTube series. We commissioned it, turned it into a TV series. Go on any clip from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared on our TikTok account. You will see the craziest engagement. And again, we're creating content, putting it in front of the audience who we know will love it in a language they understand.
Cool. I love this. I mean, I hope you've been inspired by this because it's been really interesting to hear your views, to hear some of this, the ways they're working together, all this cool stuff. So I'm going to end this now because I think we're already a little past time, and I'm sorry I kept you a little bit longer. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank my two producers, David Amodio and Jules McKean. So thank you very much. Thank you. And of course, I want to thank our panelists. Please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you so much, Lucy, Neil, James, and Matt.